My name is Kenneth Robertson, Chief Procurement Officer for the City of Miami. Today is Wednesday, June 26th. It's approximately 10:18 a.m. in the morning. We're convening here at the James L. Knight Center, Merrick Rooms 1 and 2 in Miami, Florida. The purpose of today's meeting is to convene the Evaluation Selection Committee for RFP 12-13-001, to lease a city-owned waterfront property for marina, restaurant, retail uses. This meeting is being audio recorded. The cone of silence is being lifted for this meeting as communications during evaluation committee meetings are exempted from the cone of silence. At this time, I'd like to ask all of the committee members and members of the public to introduce themselves for the record. Getting to my right. Stephen Perricone.
Kathleen Haley.
Veronica Icas, Assistant City Attorney.
Henry Torrey, Director of Public Facilities. Aldo Bustamante, Real Estate Manager for the city.
Steve Niebler, Committee Member.
Judy Marcy, Assistant Public Facilities.
And now the public attendees.
Tomas Regalado, City of Miami.
Ron Nelson, City of Miami. Art Noriega, Miami Parking Board.
Dusty Melton, Grove resident.
Sir.
Public law doesn't require anybody to identify themselves at a public meeting.
Okay. Next.
Francesco Valley, Grove Bay.
Shulo Steakhouses.
Richard Perez, Holland and Knight.
If that's the case, can I take back my name?
No, thank you, everyone. Regarding this process, I will serve as the liaison for the evaluation committee members. We did not participate in the evaluation. It will be the committee members alone who are submitting evaluation scores. On behalf of the City of Miami and the Public Facilities Department, I'd like to extend our sincere appreciation to members of the committee for taking your valuable time and participating in this procurement process by serving as a volunteer on the selection committee. At this time, I'd like each of the committee members to confirm and have them individually state for the record that no one has violated the cone of silence by either contacting or having been contacted by any of the proposers or by anyone on behalf of the proposer, and that the scores that they are about to submit are theirs and theirs alone. For each committee member.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm.
I confirm.
Thank you. All four present committee members have confirmed no violations of the cone of silence. Additionally, I'd like each of you to confirm and state for the record if you have any conflict of interest, whether perceived or actual, with any of the proposers, and that you can fairly and impartially evaluate the proposals based solely on the RFP, addenda issued, and the responses received.
I have no conflict.
I have no conflict.
I have no conflict.
I have no conflict.
Thank you. All four current present committee members have stated that they do not have any conflict of interest with the proposers. That being said, today we are reviewing one proposal. The city received two proposals for this RFP from Valletta LLC and Grove Bay Investment Group. Earlier this month, the Valletta LLC proposal was voluntarily withdrawn, so it will not be considered by the committee today. None of the proposals have been deemed non-responsive by the Department of Public Facilities. And at this point, I would like to go over the evaluation form and the scoring criteria for the RFP. There are 5 scoring sections. The first being overall project design, proposed renovation, compatibility with the master plan, activities and projects, out of a total of 25 points. And at the bottom of the scoring sheet, you'll see that there's a table matrix with a point value of 25 points and how those points are allocated within the following percentiles. 90th percentile being outstanding, 80th percentile being good, 70th percentile being adequate, and anything under 70th percentile being unacceptable. The next category is proposers' team, qualifications, financial capacity, and operational history, also out of 25 points. Proposers' management and operational plan, out of 15 points. The financial return to the city, which is out of 30 points. And the extent of local participation, which is out of 5 points, for a total possible score of 100. At this point, I'd like the committee to nominate a chairperson. The role of this person will be to keep the dialogue on point, to maintain orderly discussion between the committee members, to control the agenda, And ultimately, the chairperson will be responsible for preparing the recommendation to the city manager as to the committee's recommendation as to the disposition of this RFP.
Henry Torrey, I volunteer to be the chairperson.
I'll second that, but with a caveat, if I may. Just for future reference, and please let me talk. I don't think it's fair for Henry to be on this committee. I'm going to tell you why. We're all human. Henry works for someone. The person that he works for someone. That someone has to report to 5 commissioners. I really don't think it's fair for someone, for the city, to be on this committee because it is humanly impossible to make an unbiased opinion. That's just my opinion. However, saying that, I will second his nomination.
Okay, I would like to comment that I disagree with you.
Of course you do.
My opinion is going to be unbiased. I have not spoken to anyone. I haven't been approached by anyone.
So
So
have I.
unequivocally, my opinion is going to be unbiased.
Okay, as will mine.
The city's financial integrity principles states that evaluation selection committees are to be comprised of a majority composition of non-City of Miami employees. The current committee composition is compliant with our financial integrity principle. In fact, only one of the 4 present committee members are City of Miami employees. Therefore, the percentage ratio of non-city employees to city employees on this procurement selection is 75%. The city is currently compliant with our financial integrity principles. With that, is there concurrence on selection of the chairperson of the committee?
I concur, yes.
Okay, thank you. That being said, I'll turn the agenda over to the chairperson for them to begin their evaluations.
Good morning. Committee members, I want to point out that in your package you have a letter from Holland and Knight addressed to myself dated June 25th, 2013. In that letter, 2 points are raised, and it's a clarification of what was stated at the presentation a couple of weeks ago. In particular, I'd like to point you to the second point, and that is an issue that was raised in the addendum where we specifically deleted all requirements to any individual specific amount of square footage. So when the RFP required that the garage retail and the parking garage be maximized, the word maximized was not defined. The word maximized simply was a term that internally we discussed and thought that we would put it out there and let the respondents figure out what they would propose. The term maximized was never intended to specifically say that you had to build on every square foot of the parking facility. There's also an issue as to what parking spaces the City of Miami may be required to make available to Monty's restaurant. That was not an issue that was necessarily specifically touched upon during the presentation, but it is something that you may want to be aware of. So that letter is in your package for your review. And if you have any questions, we would be happy to address them. Mr. Chairman?
Okay, I think the way we should handle this is go person by person, explain your thoughts and what your recommendation may be. Steve, why don't you go ahead first?
Okay, it's, I have a few hundred questions here. First of all, did we have any, well, I'm going to give you my opinion.
Okay. Well, as far as questions, they
Well,
cannot answer
questions, I
questions
mean,
today.
Statements, okay. What about, Veronica, what have we found out about any vetting? Anything come back negative?
Nothing came back negative.
Everybody's clean.
Everybody's clear.
Was there anything in the RFP that pertains to any lawsuits?
There is no lawsuits involving any of the named principals or subs that were presented in the RFP.
What about a principal, for example, I happen to be aware of the lawsuit against Grove Harbor. I have a copy of it here with me. Said it doesn't pertain to this RFP?
It does not.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so let me go. Okay, Mr. Mayor, thank you for coming. At least I'm glad to see that someone in your authority at the the city thought that this was an important enough issue to attend. These are all, some of the things I'm going to say are my opinions, and some of them I'm absolutely convinced are purely factual. So I wrote down some notes. I usually like to speak from bullet points, but I have all the backup with me. To me, this is very serious stuff. It's, you know, I've lived and or worked in Coconut Grove since 1974. It's almost 40 years. I dare say that's probably longer than most people, if not all, on the village council. Most people, maybe not all, on the Chamber of Commerce. I'm sure I'm the oldest one in this room, so for sure than anybody in this room. So I just wanted everybody to know, because there was some blogging going around that there was no one on the committee that was a Grove person. Well, I'm about as much a Grove person as you're going to find. Not in this room, just in Coconut Grove, period. And I've always tried to be very helpful to the city and the Grove. This is about 7.02 acres of upland land, including 0.94 acres of submerged land. That's a lot of land on prime City of Miami waterfront with an 80-year lease. The way I look at an 80-year lease is that basically the city is giving someone the right for free to pay rent, but for free, without purchasing the land, to construct something on that property for 80 years. Because if you look at the RFP, and if you look what the lease says, in year 50 and year 65, you can renew the lease on the same terms and conditions subject to various and sundry appraisals. So in my mind, it's an 80-year lease. And anybody that's in the restaurant business, like myself and Steve Perricone, knows that it's difficult not to be successful when you're on the water, regardless of what your concept is. But I have certain specific issues with the RFP, and I'm going to do my best to go through them, including backup from these people's book, which I have copies of the pictures here. First of all, let's talk about the parking garage. We spoke about this letter from Holland and Knight talks about that they couldn't find anything in the public records regarding DeMonte's parking, 144 spaces. But the RFP does say that the city has existing obligations. It seems to me, if it were me, I would do my best to ask someone in the city, which you have the right to do, okay, what are the existing parking obligations? They're not your obligations, they're the city's obligations, but you have to take those into consideration in context of the size of the parking garage. So I have a letter here dated August 18, 2004, from Javier Carbonell, the acting zoning administrator, which refers to 144 public parking spaces, parking lot at the corner of South Bayshore Drive and Pan American Drive, and 114 public parking spaces located adjacent to the Coconut Grove Expo Center. That's why I stated at the previous meeting that it seems to me that if we're going to build a garage, and I don't know where else there is left to build a garage of that magnitude, it seems to me that we have to provide what we have to provide by contract with the city. 144 spaces, and we may as well do the 114 spaces and get it all over with so the city is clear to do what it wants to do with the convention center property. So that in my mind takes care of the 144 and potential 114 spaces. The letter from Holland and Knight also talks about, and Veronica addressed that, about it doesn't say a maximum. Well, I read it differently, Veronica. On page 2 of Amendment 1, it says, all references to this RFP that require the proposer to lease 40,000 square feet of garage retail are stricken. The proposer must provide a configuration for the garage that maximizes the amount of ground floor retail and must lease all the space from the city. Well, I don't know how else to say it. To me, that's plain English. That means maximum. Then, on the same amendment, on page 5, it talks about building to design the garage within a specified boundary. See Exhibit A. That's the footprint plan. And a layout of the retail spaces that we release to the successful proposer with a maximum amount of retail space that can be incorporated on the ground floor. Approximately 40,000 feet has a line drawing through it. The garage layout will maximize parking. I don't, to me, that means maximum. Here's a piece of property. It doesn't say, I mean, think about it intellectually. It doesn't say, well, here's a piece of property, and design your project, okay, and we'll have a look at it, and if it's okay with us, therefore it's okay to do it. But it's not okay, because the garage, the size of the garage, is predicated on the amount of parking spaces that are required for the proposer. And in addition, the 144 spaces, and maybe another 114 spaces, that's the city's decision to make, and maybe other spaces for off-street parking authority, that's their decision to make. So it seems to me it can't be any clearer than that. It just, in my mind, it's clear, it doesn't follow the RFP, and I just don't think it conforms to what the RFP talks about as far as parking is concerned. The RFP also outlines the requirements of how to calculate the amount of required parking spaces. No confusion. Okay? So let's go over that. So on page 15 of the RFP, under parking garage retail, it says the following. The number of parking spaces needed for the successful proposer's project will be based on 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet of retail, 1 parking space for every 5 boats of dry or wet storage, and 8 spaces for every 1,000 square feet of restaurant gross area. It doesn't talk about Miami 21. It doesn't talk about air-conditioned space, okay? And as a matter of fact, in order to have a liquor license in the state of Florida and the city of Miami, you have to have at least 200 seats under one continuous roof. So I'm going to go through that parking calculation as well, which bear with me, let me get to my stuff here. This is a page from your RFP. And we discussed this, or I asked this question at the last meeting. By the way, I don't know what everybody else in the committee has done, but I asked the city for a copy of the CD. Unfortunately, the first copy was blank. They provided me a second copy immediately. It was approximately 3 hours. I listened to the whole thing word for word. So here's a page from your book, and it has all the parking calculations. It comes up with 497 spaces. But what you've done is you've taken into consideration, for example, let's just talk about Hangar 42, which I don't agree with its location, by the way, but that's just my opinion. It talks about 3,000 square feet. Well, in your presentation, your 3,000 square feet was the size of the kitchen. Well, that's 24 parking spaces. That doesn't satisfy what the RFP says. You have 250 seats, I believe it says, under tables and umbrellas. That doesn't even qualify for a liquor license because it has to be under a continuous roof. And you guys know that. That's what you do. That's what I do. So, a shortened version of what, according to my calculations, hasn't changed from the last meeting we had. I believe that based upon the square footage of the restaurants and the seats that you're going to have, and based upon what the RFP calls for, that you're short 106 parking spaces for the restaurants, the 144 spaces for the Montes, that's the city's problem. I strongly believe that the garage retail should be 60,000 feet. I think the garage, it says in plain English that you have to maximize the amount of parking spaces, so another 20,000 feet times 4 spaces is 80. Okay, so including the 144 for Montes, I'm just thinking about the size of the parking garage. Okay, that's the 827 spaces. Then if you add the 114, which the city may want to do, and then that doesn't take into account whatever the monthly off-street parkings are, we're talking about a 1,000-car garage. So that's a big garage, but you know something? I feel very comfortable the city has the money to build it. I feel very comfortable the city has the ability to do it. And I believe that I'm correct on my parking calculations, and the law backs me up. It's not Miami 21. Nowhere in there did it talk about Miami 21. Nowhere in any code that I can see does it talk about air-conditioned space. It's total restaurant square feet. We're going to come back to that. I believe that in the first couple of pages of the RFP requires what is necessary on site, meaning in addition to the above, parking garage and the retail, a marina, a boatyard, boat storage facility, and a fueling station, as well as an informal and formal restaurant. Nowhere does the RFP contemplate the marrying of two facilities, this facility and Grove Harbor next door. They're two separate leases. I don't have the exact date, but I'll be within a year. The Grove Harbor lease expires, I think it was originally a 40-year lease, expires, I believe, in approximately 27 years. So if this lease is an 80-year lease, there's a 53-year disparity between the termination of the Grove Harbor lease and this lease, assuming this happens. It's a bad plan, in my opinion. It would add another 409 slips to the already existing Grove Harbor facility, which is double plus 51%, and would impact the Shake-a-Leg program. Forget about Monty's. I want to show you a picture here, which I held up last time, because I took offense to the way that it was explained. I know you guys can't see it, but here's a picture of Grove Harbor and how you exit. And here's the extension that Grove Harbor has the right to put on. So the space between Grove Harbor and this Monty's dock right here gets narrower. It's snuck in between the Shake-a-Leg. So how can someone look me in the eye and tell me that there's not going to be, under certain circumstances, a traffic jam for all Shake-a-Leg, which is a terrific program, which we all help. This is the right thing to do, okay? How can there not be a conflict? And then when you make, and Grove Harbor, thank goodness, has a lot of big, beautiful boats. So when those boats come out here, it's going to be very difficult for the Shake-a-Leg people to navigate through here. The statement was also made by someone, not mentioning any name, that the big boats are going to go to the right because that's a deeper channel. That is true. But you can still go out the left channel. But in order to get there, you got to navigate through here. So there's a conflict, and we're picking on poor Shake-a-Leg. So I made the statement, well, I have a big boat, and depending upon whether I want to go north or south is going to depend upon what channel I go out. This is common sense. You just have to know how to navigate the channel. If you don't, then you should take a course. So it calls, I don't understand the concept, although it happens to be economically it's terrific for you guys, okay? If someone gave me this piece of property and said, Steve, design what you would want to see there, I would probably come close to what you designed. But in my mind, it doesn't follow the RFP, because these are two independent leases, each owned by the City of Miami, 27 years approximately when that lease is over, or any legitimate renewals, extensions there are according to the charter. The city's going to take that property back. So that particular person, whether it's the city or the city bids it out and a new third party gets it, it's going to, how can you ask the people that get it that part of the deal is in order to win the RFP, you're obligated to put boats in next door. That just doesn't make sense to me. It seems to me the RFP is very specific that it's an independent lease and an independent use. Let me go back to my page 1. Bear with me. Then we spoke about the same time about, since we were going to sell diesel fuel, forgive me for using the word we, but you were going to sell diesel fuel at Grove Harbor. To me, it doesn't make any difference in the long term, although it's important, the economics to the city, whether or not the city would make more or less on the diesel fuel sales, whether they're at Grove Harbor or this new facility. What does make a difference to me is you gotta take that tank and you gotta put it in the ground. And you gotta put it in the ground now. So again, the same thing, when the lease is expired, there's 53 years left to go on the other lease, on this new lease, what is one to do? Now you gotta go back 27 years from now, God knows what the cost will be then, God knows what the standards will be, the environmental standards, may not even be able to sink a diesel fuel tank. So that's what the RFP says, a marina, a boatyard, a fueling station. It doesn't say a fueling station exclusive of diesel fuel. So if you look at page 29, and then I asked the question about diesel fuel. And someone from your side, I'm trying not to mention any names on purpose, someone from your side said that, well, we pay 10% of the gross at Grove Harbor. Well, that's not true. Because I have a copy of that page from the Grove Harbor lease, which says 5% of the gross revenue from the marine fueling facility. So there was another boo-boo. I mean, I think that could be a legitimate mistake because it's from memory, but I like to do my homework. So there are the facts. You wouldn't have to check your own lease. So I just don't understand why it wasn't constructed as an independent facility, because it's not your property, it's the city's property, and the city should have the right to do with what it wants to do with this property once that lease is expired. So again, I don't think, and I'm going to say it over and over again, that aspect of the RFP also does not conform to what the RFP states. The RFP calls for a complete restoration of the hangars. So if you look on page 25 of the RFP, it says as follows. Renovating the 2 hangar buildings in place to provide the best utilization of available space for dry rack storage and or other uses. Exterior and interior of hangar buildings should be completely renovated pursuant to the City Code Section 23 in a manner compatible to the adjoining Grove Harbor Marina hangars. And they did a good job with those 2 hangars. However, I want to show you, as I can find it here, these pictures. It's on what you call your slide 3, your slide 5, your slide 21, your slide 22, your slide 23, slide 24, slide 25, slide 26, all pictures of what the hangars are going to look like, and that's not restoring the hangars according to historical standards under that section of the city code. You have glass, you haven't put the wings back with the sliding doors. To me, historic in section 23 means put them back the way they were. Can you take off the little side buildings that were added on after the fact? Absolutely. So to me, that doesn't, that also is bothersome to me because it doesn't follow, forget about the spirit of the RFP, it just doesn't follow what the RFP calls for. As a matter of fact, to go back, so that to me is a boo-boo. To go back to your slide 29 that you mentioned on the tape, Richard, there's an alternative plan for the, in case in the future, there's an alternative plan in the future to put in a boat retrieval and lifting facility. But if you look at that, it completely changes the dynamics of the circulation of the project. It changes the dynamics of the flow of traffic, and it doesn't comport in any way to what you're pretending to do. So again, to me, if it was going to be done, it should be a completely independent facility. I don't think it complies in that respect either. Let me continue.